Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Live with Jaron Kleber, coming to you live from the Repair Shop of Tomorrow studios, just south of Atlanta, Georgia. And today, really excited about the episode that we're putting out here. As we wind down 2023, we're going to take a look at looking forward to 2024 and discuss some of the micro and macro trends that we see not only in the automotive aftermarket space, but also the economy. So today, I'm joined by a couple special guests who are really going to give their expert opinions on this topic. So without further ado, let's meet our panel today as I bring them in here. We've got one of my good friends, business associates. He is a shop owner and also the COO and Director of Coaching for Repair Shop of Tomorrow, Mr. Ron Tenner. How are you today, Ron?
Fantastic. Thank you, Jaron.
So looks like you're coming to us from Missouri today instead of sunny South Florida. So the weather's probably not as good as you're used to the last couple weeks, huh?
No, it was 22 degrees this morning, so I'm ready to head back to Southern Florida. So rest assured, I'll be short tripping it there.
There you go. There you go. And the other guest that we have is going to be new for anybody that's ever seen anything we do here on the show here. Justin Kleber. Yes, we share the same last names. Justin's actually my brother, and he is the VP of Research, and I don't want to screw this up, Justin, for Robert Baird, which is an American multinational independent investment firm and financial services company. So instead of me butchering what it is that you actually do, because I always struggle telling people what it is that you do, I'll just let you introduce yourself real quick for our listeners.
Yeah, Jaron. Well, thanks for having me on here. So I would say, my primary position is I work in the equity research department at Baird, where we have over 40 teams that each specialize or cover publicly traded companies within a certain sector of the economy. I'm primarily focused on retailers as well as consumer brands and also consumer services companies, including some that your listeners are likely familiar with in the automotive sector. And really, our job is to provide our clients who are institutional investors, not retail investors, but institutional investors that are managing large pools of capital. We want to provide them with information, advice, and really investment recommendations that can help them outperform the broader market.
So thanks for the intro there, Justin. So I think we have to put a little disclaimer out here. We're going to talk about some financial stuff. I myself am certainly not a financial advisor, so do not take any investment advice from myself. But Justin's going to talk a little bit, kind of what he sees in the economy. And then, Ron and I are going to kind of try to transition to what that means for you as shop owners. So look, let's set the table. So I did some research here. So new car interest rates in the fourth quarter, the average new car interest rate is 10%. Okay. The average price of a new vehicle now, consumers are spending about $48,000 and they're putting themselves into a 60-month loan. So really, if you look at that, if we amortize that over those 60 months, that acquisition of that vehicle is almost closer to $60,000. We've got used car interest rates at almost 14%. Now, the prices of used cars are declining slower than they have in the past, which is good for sellers, right? But it's bad for buyers. Not to mention, we've got multiple foreign wars happening across all parts of the country. We hear terms like recession, we hear terms like inflation, and we've also got, someone running our country that may be half asleep at the wheel. So, Justin, what does that actually mean for us in this industry? And give us kind of an overview of the outlook that you see going forward in 2024.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to kind of break that apart a bit. I mean, I would say, being in the automotive service space, right? The price of a new vehicle and a used vehicle, it's becoming prohibitive for, the average, let's say the average household, which actually that's probably beneficial to, a lot of the folks here on the podcast, right? Because if you can't afford a new vehicle or even a used vehicle, you have to effectively repair the one that you have, right? So from a bigger picture perspective, you mentioned the word recession, you mentioned inflation. I mean, inflation, yeah, it's a nasty byproduct of, what's happened the past few years with a lot of, excess government spending and checks being handed out to consumers and businesses. And unfortunately, what that translates into is, highest levels of inflation that we've seen and really, the past 4 decades. Now, I don't think it's all doom and gloom. Oftentimes you might hear some comments around, credit card delinquencies are rising, and that's foreshadowing the pending, collapse of the consumer. But I would say it's important to note that, credit card delinquencies and some of the defaults, Jaron, that you've mentioned to me in the past on like subprime auto loans, those are just rising from what were, I think, unsustainably low levels during the pandemic. And if you look at debt relative to incomes, because thankfully incomes for most have risen relative to kind of pre-pandemic, those metrics aren't extended or they're not really, I would say, there's not a red flag from that standpoint. So as I look from my seat, what's the outlook for 24? I would say that, again, I cover a lot of retail and consumer-facing businesses, and generally speaking, the consumer has been more resilient than I would have anticipated. But there are certainly some conflicting signals or data points that lead me to believe that, it could be a more difficult 24. You're seeing, savings rates at multi-year lows. Most of the companies I cover are talking about a consumer that's being more choiceful. So maybe they're not splurging on those bigger ticket categories because of the fact that interest rates, as you alluded to, are at levels that nobody's seen, in the past 15, 20 years. They're gravitating towards promotions. The largest retailer in the world, which is Walmart, a company that I cover, they sound fairly upbeat about what they're seeing in their business. But Walmart's usually somewhat of a contraindicator for the broader health of the consumer. If Walmart's business is doing well, that might not be the best indication of, again, the health of the average consumer. But maybe I'll pause and kind of shift to auto services, because I think that's probably the most relevant discussion for this podcast, right? And, it's a vertical where, I would say, generally speaking, it's very resilient, right? It's needs based, it's demand driven. Certain parts of the sector that I cover, like the quick lube business, for example, continues to perform incredibly well, stacking up growth on top of growth. We have heard some more instances about maintenance deferral. So whether that's trying to get some additional mileage, I guess, out of your brakes, or maybe opting to replace 2 tires instead of 4. I mean, our view on the automotive sector as a whole is that, and it's in a pretty good spot. Again, it's resilient, it's needs based. There's a lot of pricing power. You talked a little bit about just the complexity of vehicles, right? Your average order value, or average repair order, I guess I should say, continues to climb. And then going back to the point where it's challenging for a lot of people to afford new vehicles, which I think kind of plays right into the sweet spot within the automotive aftermarket sector.
So
maybe I'll
you
go out there and take
Yeah. So you said something to me when we were talking, and you already hit on it. But I think it's interesting, an interesting paradox to say that when Walmart is reporting record sales and a strong growth, that might not necessarily be a good thing for the economy. Again, due to, I'm sure, the lower prices and people being more price conscious and shopping at those places. But you also mentioned deferred work. And I'm going to give a shout out to the icon in our automotive aftermarket podcast space, Carm Capriato. We did an episode, myself and a few other shop owners did an episode on deferred work and turning that into a sales growth tactic. And then we also followed up with one where we talked about the importance of CRM. And so if you don't listen to Carm's show, make sure you go find those episodes, subscribe to the Aftermarket Radio Network, because Carm's putting out this type of information all the time. So so Ron, I'm gonna pivot to you real quick from a coach's perspective, from a shop owner's perspective. Justin's talking about, some of those big retailers in the automotive sector that he follows, and they're starting to see, putting off their maintenance a little bit longer or only doing what is needed. So how do we as a company, how do you as a coach, how do you approach those conversations with your clients, and what should shop owners in the industries really be focusing on right now, since we know that some of these things are starting to happen and car counts are starting to dip a little bit across the country?
Well, Jaron, I liken this a lot to 2008 when things went south. None of us were really prepared. None of us had expected that to happen. With this, we've at least had some segue into what's about to come. We've been talking about the doom and gloom for the last 12 to 18 months. It's inevitable. In our industry, I think we've prepared ourselves. We're ready for it. I'm seeing the opposite as a coach. More shops today are groomed for maintenance and leading customers down that CRM path and preparing to fill that void. As we talk about, things are going to get tight. The economy's bad. Inflation is what it is. I saw more tightening of the belts 4 months ago than I see today. 4 months ago, it was like shop owners were really seeing the phones slow down, car counts dip. All of a sudden, we're starting to see an uptick and things are coming back. I think people, for lack of a better word, they were scared early on by media. And there is more sunshine and rainbows to this than we were led to believe we might see. I believe that we're going to consistently, in our market at least, the good aftermarket independent shop owners are going to see a consistent, steady climb in business. Car counts may not climb greatly, but I think business, those who are bringing their cars in, will not be afraid to fix them, because, like Justin touched on, going out and buying a new car today is not the easiest thing in the world to do. Do I think borrowing money will get easier in the next couple of years before it tightens back up again? I do believe that right now we're in a great place, and I think we'll continue to stay there.
So you mentioned, and I've read a lot of articles and I've seen a lot of very successful shop owners that, in 2008, right, they were prepared, Ron. They, from a cash flow perspective, they weren't hemorrhaging funds, they weren't overspending. And unfortunately, for some of those shops that were doing that, they weren't well prepared. Those are the ones that started to go out of business. And those successful shop owners started to suck up those ones that were failing. And for some folks, those years ended up being, where they doubled, tripled their net worth because they were capitalized. So circling back to you, Justin, thinking in the automotive space, those multi-million-dollar, chains that you cover, how are they looking at trying to cut certain fixed expenses to prepare themselves for 2024, or are they saying, hey, now's the time to invest and spend more money? Or what are some of those conversations looking like in the space that those companies you follow?
Yeah, maybe first, before going there, I think, at least from my perspective, whatever's on the horizon in 24, I don't think it's anything analogous to what happened in 07, 08, 09. That was a global financial crisis that created, a massive kind of credit crunch, which, filters its way through the economy. So whether or not we have a recession or we don't have a recession in 24, I'm not thinking that what lies ahead is anything like what was experienced in kind of, the great financial crisis. So if you survived the 08, 09 timeframe, I think you have a lot less to worry about sitting here in terms of what might happen in 24. But yeah, in terms of the companies that I cover, I think there has been some discipline, or they like to use the term belt tightening around expenses, but it's not customer facing expenses, right? They're not cutting labor. It's just maybe removing or fine tuning some of those nice to have expenses. Also making sure, this is more of a comment, maybe less about the auto services space and more about retail in general, making sure they're not caught with the wrong type of inventory, which happened a few years ago when the consumer all of a sudden decided they wanted to stop buying, patio sets and barbecue grills and everything that all of us splurged on, during the pandemic when we were stuck at home. And then you end up having the wrong inventory that you have to mark down and sell through at a lower price point, which again is not as applicable to the auto services space. But I think the companies, again, they're tightening their belts from an expense perspective. They're mindful of kind of the unknown as it in terms of looking forward to 24, but certainly not cutting back on that customer facing expense. And then I would say there's been a little bit more of an indication on just making sure prices are sharp. I think what happened during the pandemic period when, again, consumers had excess money from stimulus checks, small businesses had excess money, whether it was PPP loans or the employee retention tax credit. I think there was some, maybe arrogance is the wrong word, but prices moved up significantly, right? It's not just in auto services, it's across the board, right? Inflation is up 20-30% from 19. And so we're starting to see some signs of not broad-based price reductions, but just making sure that you're priced competitively, in that local market, to make sure you can win that business. Because the consumer is more, again, I think the consumer budgets and wallets are in many cases stretched. They've absorbed a lot of inflation over the past few years. So that's hopefully some insight into what we're seeing.
Yeah, and I love that you talk about the consumer facing, not taking away from that client experience, right? Because that's so important. And as it relates to the automotive aftermarket, we always talk about when price typically becomes an issue, right? It's because that there's an absence of value and that experience doesn't meet that client's expectations. And, you talk about, Ron, we talk about all the time, you go to a Ruth Chris steakhouse, free plug there for Ruth Chris. Maybe I'll get a gift card or something if they're listening, but God knows I could use one these days. But, you go to Ruth Chris and you have this amazing dinner and this experience and they treat you right. You sign the bill at the end of the day. You don't really care, right? You just go on without thinking about it. But if you go there, the food's not good, you have a bad experience. Now all of a sudden price becomes the most important thing. So, Ron, you're coaching, upwards of 20, 25 clients. And I know you guys are touching base, obviously, of course, with those clients. And what are you trying to to piggyback off of Justin's? What are you trying to tell some of your shop owners on tightening the belt? Because we certainly never want to devalue our experience, lower our prices, quit marketing, right? Those are all things that we need to ramp up, and so that we're seeing these growths that we want. So, is there anything from your side that you're looking at when you work with these clients where maybe there's some unnecessary spending that they can kind of look and try to tighten up a little bit?
Yeah. So basically during the pandemic era, if we want to consider it that, expenditures and discipline kind of went out the door. I mean, guys were spending money on whatever they felt they wanted. New equipment, new trucks, new cars, what have you. We cannot, to touch on what Justin said, we cannot affect what the customer sees. So our labor, we have a tight enough labor problem as it is. We're definitely can't play with the labor side of our businesses, right? What we can do is be disciplined. Don't go buy new equipment if you don't have to have it. Invest in your people by all means. This is a time when we should really refocus on what it is the clients are after and what they deserve. The experience is all thank you for touching on my Ruth Chris thing. I love that. Because that's near and dear to my heart. And I'd rather go to Ruth Chris than to go to Longhorn or somewhere like that. Right. So I liken our business that way. We literally have some of the greatest clients in the automotive industry in the independent world. The reason we have that is because most of our people focus. I think if we stay disciplined, we stay within a budget, and we focus on the labor side of our business, we'll survive whatever is coming really easily. I don't think we're going to see, I agree with Justin, we're not going to see what we saw in 08, 09 by any means, but those who aren't disciplined are going to see a hit. So we really got to stay focused on our people and delivering what our customers want without getting out of control expense wise.
Yeah. And, we talk about this industry it's a great industry to be a part of, right? So anybody that's listening to this, the purpose of this is to, yes, we know that there's challenges in the economy. I had another quote that Justin, when we were talking, there's a difference between the economy and the stock market, right? And I think that paints a good picture. The stock market's always, forward thinking, looking at what potentially is going to happen. But to Ron's point, we got to get back to blocking and tackling, right? This industry isn't recession proof, but it is certainly recession resistant. And so think about that as a shop owner. Think about your processes. Think about your people. And now more than ever is the time to really make sure that you have all your systems, operations, procedures in place. Ron, we had the discussion offline, right? All but one of the clients that you work with in November were up in sales, right? There were some that had a little dip in car count, but is car count really what we should be measuring ourselves off in this industry, Ron?
In today's world, no. We talk about it quite often with meetings with other coaches, Jaron, that you're involved in. And in this industry, if you're paying attention and you're focused and you're doing things right, systematically looking at numbers, you can tell when car counts go up, our focus goes south and our average repair orders tend to go down. So if our car count goes down or stays steady, when we focus, our average repair orders will climb. Let's face it, guys, it's easier to work smarter, not harder. And we owe that to our clients. Our customers deserve full transparency. So if we give them that, it's better beneficial to us as well as it is to them. So I agree. It's a great time in our industry. And I think that guys need to understand that we've got you said it, a resistant, not recession proof setup. Take advantage of that and really focus on your business.
Yeah. So I like to, again, bring it all back to numbers, right? And so, we talked about the interest rates on the vehicles and things like that. And, 1 in 5 borrowers now, according to certain reports, 1 in 5 borrowers owe at least $1,000 a month on their vehicles. Okay. $1,000 a month on their vehicles. Justin, you talked about how some of the delinquency doesn't necessarily correlate to that, or doesn't necessarily mean that everything is doom and gloom. So, the subprime loans obviously are there's 6% that are more than 60 days past due. That's the highest it's ever been since 1994. Break that down for somebody that's, again, not living in this financial world every single day. So, I mean, that's a negative effect, but what does that really mean for the broader, I guess, consumer economy, so to speak?
Yeah. So again, when I try to assess kind of the health of the consumer in aggregate, which is somewhat tough, right? To paint the consumer with one broad stroke of a paintbrush. I mean, there's different income demographics, right? From lower end to middle income to upper end. But when I look at credit metrics, and I think it's important when you read perhaps these headlines like you're referencing around subprime borrowers and kind of defaults on that, you have to put that in context. And I don't have the specific numbers or, in front of me, but subprime is a small portion of the overall, outstanding loan pool, whether it's mortgages on homes or whether it's auto loans. So you do need to kind of take some of those comments with a grain of salt, particularly if they're cherry picking, certain statistics and really focusing on subprime, which is obviously the consumer that has kind of the highest degree of credit risk. But when you look at, again, what I look at would be just broader credit card delinquency trends. And as I alluded to, you're seeing those trends move up and to the right, but they're coming off of this pandemic period. Again, I'll go back to the fact that there was a lot of free money floating around the system. And arguably there's still some free money slushing around the system today. And so when consumers in general are flush with cash, right, they tend to pay off credit cards. And so we were at a level of delinquencies just in aggregate that were not sustainable. And so we're moving back to what I think is more quote unquote normal. Now, we need to pay attention to what the trend in the trajectory of delinquencies look like as we move into 24 and throughout 24. But again, nothing that is all that alarming, at least from my perspective, sitting here today, as it relates to kind of the credit backdrop. I mean, most of us, either on the podcast or listening in, we've all locked in low fixed rate mortgages for the most part, right?
Hopefully.
Now your mortgage is no longer a liability. It's almost an asset given where, the rates are versus what, the going rate is in the market today. So don't lose sight of that fact. There's a lot of wealth, right, that's been created if you are a homeowner. The price of your home has risen. So again, it's not all, doom and gloom from my perspective. I think there's certainly challenges that lie ahead in 24. One of the things that we're talking a lot about with our clients and the companies we cover is just, and you guys kind of alluded to this, is that there's been a lot of pricing, right, that has helped boost or grow the top line, because a lot of inflation was passed through onto the consumer. And we're kind of at the end of that at least from my perspective. It's not that prices are coming down, but there's no longer this rate of increase, right, that we've seen over the past few years. So, Ron kind of used the term, work smarter, because I do think some of these easy, let's call it easy gains, from a revenue perspective, when you were just pushing through price like that in my opinion is in the rearview mirror.
Yeah. So I think that's perfect. So that's why I kind of wanted to, again, have you expound on that a little bit, because basically from what I'm hearing is, the last 2.5 years, everything we saw really wasn't normal. We're actually probably more normal now heading into 2024 from the debt perspective, from creditors, things like that, than what we've experienced in the last couple of years. And so what I try to stress to shop owners across the country as I travel all across the country is going back to that top line sales growth and seeing those 10, 15, 20% increases in business. Well, if you took a 10, 12, 15% increase from your parts supplier, right, and you only grew 15, 16%, did your business really actually grow? And unfortunately, a lot of these shops, Ron, and none, of course, that work with Repair Shop of Tomorrow, but the ones that we're out there and we're talking to and trying to bring into the community, bring into RSOT, and they're saying, hey, what can you guys do for us? I mean, look at what I've done the last couple of years. Look at all these results that I've had. And I always follow that up with, the last 2 years, 2.5 years in the automotive aftermarket was probably some of the best times we've all ever experienced, right? And my question is what did you do differently over the course of these last 2.5 years to realize that increase in business, right? Did you add more people? Did you enhance your processes? Did you increase your marketing? And if the answer is no, then there are a lot of shop owners, unfortunately, out there that have this false sense of success over the last couple of years, right? And to Ron's point, this is where we need to make sure we're buckling down and we're charging appropriately, especially as it relates to the labor side of our business. It's the most opportunity for profit, but it can also be the most opportunity for loss because payroll is typically one of our biggest expenses. And as a whole, Ron, right, our industry has pretty much undervalued our services for the entirety of our industry, right? And so what would be your best advice, Ron, to a shop that had that experience, had that growth over the last 2 years, but is now starting to become a little stagnant? And unfortunately, the conversations I hear is, well, get back with me towards, after the holidays when things pick back up, and then we can have another conversation. Right?
Absolutely. Well, keep in mind that, yes, you're spot on when you say we were greatly undervalued, and for the most part, we still are. I'd say maybe 50% of the industry has realized that we're undervalued and has tried to grow, while the other half still lag behind. Every day we sign clients and we work with them that appear to be doing very well. All they've done through this amazing growth time that we experienced like no other is they kept raising their prices when they were short on paying their bills. They kept raising their prices, but they weren't making any more money. Right. So yes, they threw money at the wall, but nothing stuck. So now hopefully most of us have caused the tides to rise to a level where if they catch up, they'll stay afloat and their growth will be what they are expecting it to be. If they don't, and they just let the industry try to keep pushing them, if we go stagnant, as Justin's kind of precluded to, that exorbitant growth is going to come to a halt for a while. They're going to fall back behind because they can't just keep riding the tide, so to speak. If they didn't give up with join the rest of us, they're going to sink. And I hope this industry has proven, I don't want to pick on other industries, but HVAC, plumbers, electricians, they got smart years ago before we did and said, hey, we deserve the right and we have the right to make more money. And as industries, they went out and did it as a whole. We lagged behind quite a few years, but now it seems to be catching hold. So we'll hope we continue the ride.
Yeah. So one of the favorite hashtags online, and Ron, you probably know what I'm going to say here, in 2023 was RYR,
Yep.
right? Raise your rates. Because again, we unfortunately have shop owners across the country that $80 an hour, $90 an hour, and we've got other shops that are $210 an hour, right? And so for those folks that might be listening to this that are maybe in that lower range and they're starting to see the client push back a little bit on some of those services, the time, the time to fix it is now, right? And so I read an article on Ratchet and Wrench, and Ron, I want to kind of put this to you real quick, but just let me read this here real quick. It says, the future of our industry hinges on our ability to adapt, innovate, and stay connected to the needs of our clients and our teams. Those who are willing to embrace change and innovate are the ones who will emerge stronger. So what changes, Ron, do our clients and do other shop owners in the industry need to embrace? And what are some of the things they need to make sure that they're innovating going into 2024?
Well, I would say number one, we need to make sure you keep up with modernization. This industry grows faster than any industry I've ever watched as far as technology change. Got to keep up, number one. Number two, think of it from a client's perspective. Latest trend in the last 5 years in our industry has been loaner cars. I'll use that as a perfect example. If Justin needs car repair and Justin doesn't have a spare vehicle, at the rate of today's car costs, not a whole lot of people have third and fourth cars just laying around anymore. If you're without wheels, you can't do your everyday job. You can't go to work, can't get your kids from school to school. Those are the kind of trends we have to change as business owners. Make it to where Justin doesn't have a conflict. Give him a loaner car to drive. Open that door to expansion That's the kind of changes, not just IT, not just where do you get funds in order to pay for things. What can we do to make your experience better, your life better, so that we can continue to do business together? I think that's the changes we're going to see in our industry have to take care of. Much like employers who put daycares in, a lot of people can't afford to work and go pay for daycare. So your good corporations have realized you want really good employees. Here's an avenue we can go down to get good people and make their lives better at the same time. We as shop owners have to do the same thing for our clients.
I love that. I love that. So look, we're coming up on about 40 minutes here. We try to keep these about that time frame. So gonna go just to you, Justin, real quick, just to try to summarize high level, kind of your key takeaways or talking points that you would like to leave the listeners or viewers with as it relates to trends that we're seeing, that you're seeing, and how to make sure we're best prepared for 2024.
Yeah, so I guess I would say that, I think that 2024, it's going to be, has the potential to be, again, a challenging kind of consumer spending backdrop, but nothing like what, was experienced back in 08, 09. When you look at certain indicators of consumer health, like employment, the labor market's really never been stronger. But then, there are some of these conflicting signs that I alluded to in regards to just, consumers being more price sensitive, and then also just some of the metrics that we talked about with credit. But I think, in general, I'm bullish on the automotive aftermarket service space, for all the reasons that, that we discussed. It's needs based, generally resilient, not recession proof, as you and Ron alluded to, but certainly recession resilient. And the fact that, the cost of a new vehicle and or used vehicles are exponentially higher than they were, 3 years ago, I think that only feeds into your industry. And one of the other things we haven't touched on yet, Jaron, would just be, look, gas prices are down a lot. Now we'll see if that's sustainable or not, but what happens usually when gas is low, people tend to drive more. And at least the businesses that I evaluate, one of the bigger kind of demand drivers is miles driven, right? So if gas is down and vehicle miles traveled are up, that probably bodes pretty well for your industry. And so that's kind of where my head's at as we head into 24. I would much rather be involved in kind of the automotive service space than some of these other retail subsectors that I also cover, that sell bigger ticket discretionary merchandise, where, the consumer can make that choice and say, you know what, I don't have to, buy that $5,000 couch, or maybe I'll wait to, put in an outdoor space into my backyard. So again, there's a lot of differences in like what consumer verticals we're talking about. And I think, being in the automotive aftermarket space, particularly the service oriented sector, is a good spot to be at. So I wish everybody luck and prosperity in 24. Good luck.
Well, you did a great job of not painting doom and gloom. So I know we all appreciate that. Just a couple things. So, and we really didn't touch on a lot of the, kind of positive, I guess. Well, we talked about a lot of positive, but, positive statistics. You talk about gas prices going down. Miles driven is obviously something we look at all the time. AAA came out with their report that said, the travel increase over the holiday season has spiked to levels that they haven't seen in a while. The average age of the vehicle is over 12 years old, and there's 290 million vehicles on the road, which are all really good things for our industry. And of course, the price of vehicles. I mean, we can't discredit that, right? The average repair order in the industry is somewhere around $420 is what they say. The average repair order we track with our clients are seeing anywhere from a $700 to $1,000 average repair order. So if prices of the vehicles are now getting to a point where you're spending $900 to $1,000 every single month, yet the industry's average repair order is only $412, right? If we can just help you double that to get to an $850 average repair order, well, guess what? That's a one-time fee, right? That's not a $850 payment that you have to budget for the next 60 months. And so how good are we at explaining the why it matters to fix your vehicle at your shop? Do you have a digital vehicle inspection program? Are you following the 300% rule? Are you doing these things to make sure that your client understands that you are being an advocate for them and for their vehicle, right? And the reason we put all these tools together, and the reason that you should be putting all these tools together, is because we're trying to help you as a client. I say clients, right? Shop owners. We're trying to help you build value and build a maintenance program for your customer's vehicle, right? Because we want them to have safe and reliable transportation. But sometimes we've got to use some of these statistics to let people know that this is the right decision for you financially to make at this point, to get your vehicle serviced, to have safe and reliable transportation, so that you can, get back and forth to work. You can take your kids to soccer practice, right? All of those things matter. So really look at your processes. I'll give my kind of takeaways, and then Ron will close with you. But I'm big on this, and this is something that I've kind of adapted this year, right? So, and this works for business, this works for your personal life, whatever. Discipline, process, and repetition. Okay. If you practice discipline, if you have processes in place and they're repeatable, you'll be successful, right? And then the last thing is right here is your mindset. If you have a mindset that 2024 is going to suck and that's just what's in your mind, well, you're probably going to speak that into existence. So instead of having a negative outlook, a negative mindset, right? Kind of that fixed mindset we talk about, transition into that growth mindset where, you know what, Ron, 2024 is going to be the best year for my business that it's ever been. And if you have that, you can speak that into existence. But it doesn't happen without having some discipline, having your processes in place, and repeating those processes every single day. So those are my takeaways. Ron, what are your key takeaways from this episode and moving into 2024? And we'll wrap up.
Well, basically, you guys have covered for the most part what we're all thinking. I do believe that the one piece that you and I both believe in, and we had a gentleman talk to us about at our mastermind event, is where your mindset is, where your headspace is, CEO time, as he called it. As owners, I think you need to spend some time looking at yourself as well as your business. If you make yourself first and foremost in your daily activities, your business will follow. So please, 24, I believe, is going to be a great year. The one thing none of us touched on in this entire conversation that I've been focused on the last couple of times with clients is that strike that took place short time ago really did us a favor as aftermarket people. Cars are going to get more expensive than they already are. There's no opportunity not to with what they agreed to do. There's the automotive industry. I don't know if you guys have followed that Ford dealers were suing Ford Motor Company over EVs. The market's going to change heavily in the new car market. So our space only gets better. So I beg of you to put your head in the game, focus on your business and your teams, and look at the bright spots that are coming in 24, not the downsides, because I think there's more bright than there is dark. I thank you guys for inviting me today. It's been a great conversation. Justin, it was a pleasure chatting with you, bud. I look forward to doing it again.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. And again, I appreciate you guys jumping on. It's the end of the year, and hopefully, I can never just I always have one more thing to say, Ron. You know that, Justin. That growing up with me, I always had to get the last word in, whether it was correct or not. So take that for what it is. But, you know, if 2024 goals and plans haven't been set yet, unfortunately, you're kind of a little behind the eight ball, right? Too many folks wait until that calendar flips, and then all of a sudden we get busy, and all of a sudden now we're operating without any goals. And so I would love to have the opportunity to sit down, and I know our team at Repair Shop at Tomorrow would love to have the opportunity to sit down with anybody that's listening to this. Anybody that sees this, please share this with any other shop owners that you have. Repair Shop of Tomorrow, our goal is to help our shop owners become better business owners so that they can, really get back what we think is the most valuable thing in your life, which is your time, right? Too many times we see people are just working 50, 60, 70, 80-hour weeks. They're not making any money. And all of a sudden their home life suffers, their business suffers. And, we're here to tell you there's a better way. So if you're interested in learning more, please go online, visit us at repairshopoftomorrow.com. There's obviously contact forms there. You can learn a little bit about what we do. You can also sign up for a free business evaluation where we'll look at all those KPIs in your business and we'll help you put together your plan so that you can be successful in 2024. So I want to thank everybody for listening, watching. Again, if you think this was beneficial, please share with other groups that you may be a part of, other shop owners. And Ron, great catching up as always. Justin, really appreciate you coming on, and hope everybody has a Merry Christmas and a very prosperous 2024. And we will see you next year. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.